Okay, we're going to go ahead and continue videotaping an audio tape of conversations between Richard Waldo and Edna Waldo circa 1992.
Didn't your mother wasn't sounded as if your mother wasn't very strict?
My mother was not a housekeeper. My mother was a very poor cook. She wasn't interested in housekeeping. She really should have been a teacher. And later on in her life, when they needed money, she took two little orphan children that on a paid basis to look after them. She would have been very good at that. She could have run a nursery school or something of that sort. But she was not ambitious.
Tell me about her personality. Was she vivacious? Was she open?
No, she was not.
Very friendly? Was she?
No, she was not.
Warm-hearted?
When you say vivacious, that was my Aunt Julia. My Aunt Julia was just younger than she, and was my role model. She was the country school teacher who rode side saddle horseback out into the hills around Medina to teach. She was very handsome. She had dark hair, beautiful figure, what was called the Gibson girl figure.
You're making me wonder, what is it that Dr. Lamore saw in Emily Lavisa Dearborn?
A Methodist girl. In the first place, the Methodists then were so very narrow-minded. They didn't go to theaters. They thought all actors were licentious people. They didn't, and we didn't have movies, of course, at that time. We had the actors at the theater. My mother would not go to ball games. She didn't go to county races. She didn't do any of those things that he did. So that was why my father took me to the theater and to the ball games.
Didn't you and your brothers and your mother and father do certain social things together, picnics, or did you just go to church together?
We didn't have family picnics. But the big event of the church were the big picnics our church had. And I told you before about the Eldridge English community, where there were at least 10 or maybe 15 English families that settled out there. And that they used to come to our church picnics on the river in Jamestown and bring huge freezers of country ice cream for everybody.
Old-fashioned?
Yes.
Homemade ice cream.
As far as I know, my mother was a gardener. That's one thing. My mother raised flowers was very, very good at it. She liked working outside, and I didn't realize for many years why she did, because I got to the point where I liked working outside too.
No.
But she did that.
Did she do vegetables?
My mother was not ambitious at all. She's not socially ambitious.
Did your mother do a vegetable garden as well as flowers?
No, my father did that.
Your father ran?
My father did that and vacant lots near our place.
Did he have, and the family have, or as most families maybe did in those days, a large vegetable garden?
Yes, and then when my aunt married Harry Cornwall, he lived back up as he and my father had 3 whole lots with vegetable gardens on them.
Well, how did you, just to talk about the times a bit, how did you put up, you had all these vegetables and so forth that was raised during the summer. You didn't have any refrigeration. You didn't have any freezers.
We had a cellar underneath the kitchen.
You had a cellar?
And we made pickles, we made jelly.
Did you do that too?
No, I didn't. But the only thing in housework that I ever cared about was cooking. And of course, we cooked on a coal and wood range where you had no oven gauges or anything of that sort.
You use coal and wood?
Well, depending on the season. We had a big coal burner, base burner with no one.
And was that the stove? Did that provide heat for the whole house as well as?
In the front room, we had a very large, very attractive, big base burner.
What's a base burner?
Well, it was a very large stone that had isinglass all around it. It glowed in the winter. The fire glowed. Then in the kitchen, we had a very good range. It had on the side a reservoir where you heated the water from the stove heat.
That's what your father used to to shave, and how did you all bathe in those days, and how often?
With a kitchen tub on Saturday night.
The whole family did it on Saturday night?
I don't know the whole family did, and I certainly did.
Well, I mean, I have read that there were situations where Saturday night seemed to be bath night,
It was always bath night.
and that even was bath night when my sister and I were young. But my memory is that in some instances, there was either not enough water or not enough warm
But
water.
you see, we had no inside water. The first question Bill Beatty ever asked me was, what about your home? Did you have water in the house? And I said, no. And he said, we didn't either. Our water was all carried in pails.
Well, I remember hearing it said, and maybe this applied in your case, that the oldest child bathed first. The water was not dumped. The water
No,
was
that
then
not
used.
like that.
Water was used by
It
the
was
next
not
child.
like that. And the family was very cognizant that I was a girl and that my brothers were much younger and very different breed of cats, and they certainly were. Remember, I was 4 years older than Parker, 6 years older than Yale.
14 years older than Lewis.
Hmm?
And 14 years older than Lewis.
Well, he wasn't in the picture at all. Lou wasn't in the picture until after we got the house. But it was very difficult. The water situation was when you wash dishes, we didn't have a sink. We had a dishpan on a table, and we carried the slop water out.
The slop water was the water from
Dishwater, or bath water, whatever.
Well, how did you drain the dishes? How did you rinse the dishes?
We had a separate pan and poured water over them from the tea kettle.
In the tea kettle.
Yeah.
So you learned how to save and economize water.
Well, sure, but my father in my early days had a windmill. When he had several horses, he had a windmill that pumped the water.
Well, how did you?
We had a well, and all the neighbors used our water. And then if the pump got broken, they complained.
Well, what about freezing up in the wintertime? How did that work?
Well, in the wintertime, then the farmers brought in a half a hog or a quarter of beef. We had a great big barrel outside with ice in it, and the meat and so forth were kept in that.
No, my question was, what happened to your water supply if it got very cold in the winter?
Oh, it didn't freeze up. When you primed the pump with water, you had to pour some water in and prime the pump. That's what you did.
I see.
But the neighbors all used that. The Simon brothers, who wrote letters to me later from Pittsburgh, said they didn't get water at our place, but we have better water than where they got theirs.
Now, where was your outhouse situated relative to?
It was much too near the house. It was near the barn, but at some distance. But it was a pretty good one. It had 3 holes. It had a front door.
I always wondered I hear about 2-holers and 3-holers.
This was a 3.
That suggests that 2 or 3 of you used it simultaneously.
No, you didn't, but you could have if you needed
Well,
to.
what was the sense of a number of holes?
Well, in the first place, you had to have a sizable place. There were certain individuals in those days, and there was a man named Hayden who went around and collected what was called the night sword and carried it away at certain times of the year. And in the wintertime, you can imagine it got pretty darn cold out there.
Yes.
We had the Sears Roebuck catalog for the toilet paper. There were no roll toilet paper.
You didn't use corn cobs later on?
Never
used corn cobs?
That was crude.
That was crude.
Country people maybe did, but we didn't.
I see.
My father was very good at that sort of thing. Remember that in my father's veterinary work, he had been taught the rules of sanitation. While he was on the city council, he was a city health officer because he had been trained in health provision. He had also been trained and they had a great to-do there about milk. For instance, a milkman came to your house and poured your milk out into your container.
Into your container?
Yes, and there was some question on how clean his milk was.
This was not pasteurized by any sense?
Of course not. There was some question about how clean that was. So my father's big crusade as a veterinarian was to have clean, fresh milk. And he convinced the dairymen that they had to do it. He was a city health officer, largely because he did that. So you see, he was a force for
Now,
health.
you said the only housework that you enjoyed doing or seemed to do much of was cooking. Who taught you how to cook?
Well, I think I learned. My grandmother was a very good cook. My father always said, in fact, my father sincerely loved my grandmother. He never knew his own mother. He loved her. He shoveled coal for her. He shoveled snow for her. He got her kids out of trouble. He did all those things. But he really loved her. And he always said that she could turn out more of a meal with very little that anybody he ever heard of. She taught me a little bit, but I used to read the magazines. And I read recipes, and then I decided I wanted to try them out. For instance, I decided I want to make an Irish stew. And my mother allowed me to go downtown to buy the things to do it with. I can remember when I first bought Jell-O. Jell-O was brand new.
I didn't think Jell-O came along until the 30s.
Oh, yes, it did. We had it.
Flavored Jell-O?
Sure.
Now, what did you do for fruits and things like that out in the wintertime? Where did you get fresh fruit?
Well, in the first place, during all of my childhood, we had wild fruit along the river.
And you canned a lot of that.
We canned a lot of that. We also bought fruit, same as we used to. We almost didn't can
You
it.
could buy apples and oranges and things like that in the market
Oh, yes. Boxes.
by the crate.
Yeah. And my father also bought canned goods by the crate and crackers by the crate. That turned out to be a mistake, however, because the boys had to eat up the crackers as fast as he could get them in the house.
Well,
I cannot emphasize too much the lively life that my brothers had.
well, you're not having much luck with your mother. Let's talk about your mother in the context of how was she relative to working with, getting along with, relating to her three big strapping sons?
I think my mother liked the boys better than she did me. My mother never identified with me because I wasn't like the women in her family. In the first place, I've told you this many times, and I've told Bob it many times. When the family, my grandmother and my aunts began giving me gifts, they found out that I didn't play with dolls. If they gave me a doll, it was all right. I'd sit down and look at it, but I didn't make clothes for my dolls. They wanted me to learn to sew because all Freeman women could sew. I didn't want to sew. What they learned how to give me was books, and a very early child, they gave me books.
Let's talk about how your mother identified with Parker and Yale and Lewis.
I think I can't mention Lewis because that's an entirely different story. Parker, I think, was her favorite.
What do you mean an entirely different story? You mean
It was a time period. Everything about it was different.
In other words, it's out of your context of time.
Parker had been a premature baby, born in the wintertime, and he was.
Right, you covered that.
My father always said he kept him in a cigar box. He was he had a very bad early time. In fact, Parker's health was never very good.
Well, was your mother a doting mother to her sons, or did they kid her a lot?
Yes, they did. They called her M.
They called her M. They didn't call her mother or
no,
mom.
They called her M.
M. Did she object to that?
I don't think so. Not when they did it.
She got along well with the boys.
Well, let's not say that because Yale was an entirely separate kettle of fish. Yale was the best looking, the smartest, the most gifted one of my brothers.
All three of them.
All three of them. Yale was the only one of the Lamores that could do any math, and he was very good at it. My father was good at it, however.
But the tragedy of it was that, unlike his other two brothers, he was never able to realize much success.
The tragedy was the fact that he got involved with women. And it's one thing I have missed. My father sometimes had little extracurricular affairs.
I beg your pardon?
Yes, I knew that.
No, wait a minute. This is I've never heard before. No, this is your father might have had a dalliance or two. You're telling me?
Oh yes, he did. I knew it.
How would you know that?
Well, in the first place, the one woman, her name was Kate Green, and she used to go. He'd be out in the veterinary As long as he'd be going by on their father's home. Sure, she later married the governor's son.
So was she a younger woman than your mother, or
Oh,
just?
yes. But the thing was, my mother wouldn't do anything. She was so foolish. She wouldn't do anything that he wanted to do. But you see, that's how my father took me. Because he wanted to go to the races, he wanted to go to the ball games. And then, of course, the theater, the theater where he had all these free tickets. My mother wouldn't go with her. Even Shakespeare, she wouldn't go
I
to.
mean, did she object to her husband doing those things?
No.
Yes.
Well, wouldn't have done her any good if she had, because my father had grown up in near eastern cities, and he had also had a university experience. He knew a lot about the theater. He loved it. And of course, in those days, the top New York actors went out in private cars in the railroad, and they went all over the country wherever there was an opera house. We had the only one between Minneapolis and Seattle.
You startled me when you indicated that your father may have had a couple of
I
assignations.
think during those 4 months when he was in Canada, there was a little problem.
Well, but apparently nothing serious.
Well, not as far as he was concerned, but the point is, what? The mail, we didn't have mail delivery, and the mail post office was clear down at the other end of town, and as I did all the errands, I also got the mail.
Yes.
I once got a letter, a very thick letter, with a woman's name and address on the outside of it, addressed to my father, and what do you think I did with it?
At his home address?
Yes,
And what'd you do? Throw it away?
I tore it up.
Well, you had no right to do that.
I know it, and I later one day, when he was bawling me out for something, told him what I had done, and he shut up.
Well, anyway, on that little note, I think let's stop for today. It's about 1 o'clock, and we'll be getting to eat here in a moment, so we'll give it a stop.
I also had them in the same crowd across the street from Uncle Dan. They all knew my mother's connections. When Uncle Dan came out with his 40 horsepower Buick,
Would you
everybody in town knew it. She
Would
could
you-
have had it if she wanted
would you
it.
go so far as to say your mother was dowdy?
No, she wasn't dowdy. For instance, when my Aunt Julia was very, very dressy, my mother got to the point of Aunt Julia got herself a red broadcloth two-piece suit. My mother got a brown suit. She would wear a good hat now and then. Oh, she wasn't dowdy. Her mother wouldn't let her be dowdy, but the point was, she didn't care.
Yeah.
And he never should have married her, of course not. He should have married somebody like me. Well, that's true. And of course, he made me in his own image, didn't he?
Yes, he said, apparently he did. Well, again, we just got that little bit. I'm going to stop one more time. Okay, go ahead.
One thing that should be added about my mother was that she was a very good, even great natural historian. She always knew what records should be kept. What I know about my father was what my father told her. And as he told her, she wrote it down. So that those are the best records. My father did give me one a very short typed record with only a few sentences in it. But my mother had written it down. There was much that my mother did not know about the family history because she was too young. But as the years went by, she learned things, the same as I did. So that when the time came for me to write Yet She Follows, she was living in Oregon, but she spent lots of time writing me long letters about her life on the farm and a great many other things that I used in it. But one other thing that is interesting that you probably don't know about, when my mother and father first went to Oregon, it was still a transit situation. The only place, my father got a job in a lumber mill, and he was qualified to do that because he had done it as a young man.
What time frame was this?
After they left Oklahoma and finally got to Oregon. So that my mother,
Well, give me a year here.
I don't know what the year was.
Approximate
I
year.
was writing Yet She Follows from 1930 on.
Okay, so it was in the early 30s.
Yes. So that my mother and my father was qualified to work at a lumber mill. He got a job as a mechanic. So the only place they could find to live was a tourist camp, which is what they were called in those days, tourist camp.
Okay, we'll stop the recording here as the tape has stopped, and we'll flip it over.